In 2019, Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, reported over 52,000 weekly attendees. Joel Osteen was filling stadiums. Creflo Dollar was asking his congregation for $65 million to buy a private jet. And Kenneth Copeland was telling his followers that COVID was finished because he blew the wind of God at it. That was 5 years ago. Today, Lakewood's attendance has dropped by nearly 30%. Creflo Dollar publicly renounced the tithing doctrine he preached for decades. And Kenneth Copeland went viral, but not for healing anyone. He went viral because a reporter asked him why he needed 3 private jets, and his answer made him look like a man who had something to hide. Something is happening to the prosperity gospel, and it is not a dip. It is not a correction. It is a collapse. For the first time in 50 years, the prosperity movement is losing ground on every front. Attendance is crashing. Donations are declining, and an entire generation has decided they want nothing to do with it. But here is what nobody is talking about. This collapse did not start with scandals. It did not start with lawsuits. It started with a question that millions of people finally got the courage to ask. If God wants me to be rich, why is my pastor the only one getting wealthy? To understand why the prosperity gospel is dying, you need to understand how it was built. Because it was not built on theology. It was built on television. In the 1980s, something changed in American Christianity. Preachers discovered that if you had a television audience, you did not need a local congregation. You could reach millions, and more importantly, millions could send you money directly. Oral Roberts pioneered this model. He went on television and told viewers that if they sent him money, God would multiply it back to them. He called it seed faith. You plant a seed and God gives you a harvest. The bigger the seed, the bigger the harvest. It worked. It worked so well that within a decade, an entire industry emerged. Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn, Robert Tilton, Jan and Paul Crouch at TBN. They all built empires on the same promise. Send money, receive blessings. Sow a seed, reap a miracle. But here's the part they did not advertise. While their viewers were sowing seeds and waiting for miracles, the preachers were buying mansions, multiple mansions, private jets, Rolls-Royces, vacation properties in 3 countries. The math never worked. If everyone who gave money received multiplied blessings, the entire congregation should have been rich. But the only people getting rich were the people on stage. For decades, this contradiction was hidden in plain sight. People saw the jets, they saw the mansions, but they believed. They believed because they were told that the pastor's wealth was proof the system worked. If you just had enough faith, you could have it too. And then came COVID. In March 2020, churches across America closed their doors. For the first time in modern history, congregations could not gather. Offering plates could not be passed, and people had time. They had time to sit at home and think. They had time to watch their bank accounts drain while their pastors posted Instagram photos from beachfront properties. Kenneth Copeland told his audience to keep paying tithes even if they lost their jobs. He said God would protect givers from the virus. Then members of his congregation started dying, not from lack of faith, from a virus that did not care how much anyone had donated. Jesse Duplantis asked for donations to repair his private jet while unemployment hit record levels. Creflo Dollar continued teaching that financial breakthrough was coming for anyone who gave sacrificially. But the breakthrough never came. Not for the people sending checks. Only for the people cashing them. COVID did not create doubt. It revealed it. Millions of people who had spent years believing started doing the math. They added up every tithe, every special offering, every seed gift, and they realized they had given tens of thousands of dollars over decades, and they were no closer to prosperity than when they started. But COVID was only the first blow. The second blow came from an unexpected source: the internet. For 50 years, prosperity preachers controlled the narrative. They owned the television stations. They decided what footage aired and what got buried. If someone had a bad experience, there was no platform to share it. If a scandal emerged, it could be managed. That ended. YouTube channels dedicated to exposing prosperity preachers started gaining millions of views. Former members began sharing their stories. Financial records that were once buried started surfacing online. And suddenly, the math was visible to everyone. The private jets were not just rumors. They were documented. FAA registrations, property records, tax filings. People could see exactly how much wealth was flowing from the offering plate to the pastor's portfolio. Kenneth Copeland's ministry owns at least 6 properties worth over $20 million combined. His personal airport, multiple aircraft, a compound that church members once described as a small city. Creflo Dollar's organization purchased a $65 million Gulfstream G650 after his previous jet needed repairs. The justification was that he needed to spread the gospel globally. But somehow, the gospel required the most expensive private jet on the market. Benny Hinn admitted in 2019 that the prosperity message had gone too far. The man who spent decades teaching that God wanted believers wealthy suddenly said he was recalibrating. He did not refund any donations, but he acknowledged that something had gone wrong. The admissions kept coming. In 2021, Creflo Dollar stood in front of his congregation and renounced the tithing doctrine he had preached for over 30 years. He said he had been wrong. He said the New Testament does not require 10% giving. He said he was sorry. Think about what that means. A man who built his entire empire on mandatory tithing, who told struggling families that not tithing was robbing God, who taught that financial curses would follow anyone who did not give 10%. That man stood up and said he was wrong the whole time. He did not offer to return the money, but the confession was on camera, and millions of people watched a prosperity preacher admit the system was broken. But here is where the collapse accelerates. Because the old generation is not the only one leaving. The young generation never arrived. Gallup polling shows that church membership in America dropped below 50% for the first time in 2020. Among millennials and Gen Z, it is even lower. Only about 36% of young adults claim any church affiliation at all. And among those who do attend church, the prosperity message is actively rejected. Young people did not grow up with blind trust in televangelists. They grew up with Google. They can fact-check a sermon in real time. They can look up a pastor's net worth before the service ends. They can read reviews of a church the same way they read reviews of restaurants. And when they see a preacher with a $15 million mansion telling them to give sacrificially, they do not see faith. They see a business. They see a business that profits from people who can least afford to give. The data confirms this, and churches that preach prosperity theology are declining faster than mainline Protestant churches. The denominations that once seemed unstoppable, the ones that filled stadiums and dominated Christian television, those are the ones hemorrhaging members. Meanwhile, something else is growing. Smaller churches, community churches, churches that reject celebrity pastors and flashy productions, Churches where the pastor's salary is public and the budget is transparent. Young believers are not abandoning faith. They are abandoning the version of faith that looked like a pyramid scheme. But the financial pressure is the piece that will finish this, because the prosperity gospel was never sustainable without constant growth. The model required new believers giving new money to pay for expanding empires. When growth stops, the math collapses. Several major prosperity ministries have already faced financial difficulties. Staff layoffs, property sales, reduced programming. The COVID giving slump never fully recovered, and as older donors age out, younger replacements are not arriving. The megachurch model specifically is in crisis. Buildings designed for 10,000 people now see 4,000. Mortgages taken out during boom years now strain budgets during decline. Some churches have sold properties, others have merged. A few have simply closed, and the pastors themselves are aging. Kenneth Copeland is 88 years old. Benny Hinn is 72. Jesse Duplantis is 75. The generation that built these empires is reaching the end, and their successors do not command the same loyalty. The second and third generation prosperity preachers lack the founding mythology. They did not build anything. They inherited it. And inheritance does not generate faith the way a rags to riches testimony once did. Creflo Dollar's children work in his ministry. Kenneth Copeland's family runs his organization. But the next generation of believers does not trust dynasty churches. They grew up watching pastoral dynasties accumulate wealth while their own families struggled. The magic is gone. So what replaces it? That question is still being answered. But the early signs point to something radically different. Transparency is becoming mandatory. Churches that refuse to publish financial reports are losing trust. Congregations want to see where money goes. They want salaries disclosed. They want building funds audited. Accountability is returning, independent boards, external oversight, financial controls that prevent any single leader from accessing church funds without review. The celebrity pastor model is being questioned, and the answers are not comforting for those who built empires. Small is being revalued. House churches, micro-congregations, online communities with zero overhead. Believers are discovering that faith does not require a building that costs $50 million to construct. And perhaps most significantly, the message is changing. Churches that preach sacrifice over prosperity are growing. Churches that emphasize service over blessing are attracting young believers. The next generation wants a faith that costs something. They are suspicious of a faith that promises to make them rich. The prosperity gospel is not dying because people lost faith. It is dying because people looked at the evidence and made a calculation. They calculated that the only people prospering were the ones collecting the offering. They calculated that decades of seed giving had not produced harvests. They calculated that something promised as supernatural was operating like any other business. The leaders who built this movement are still preaching. The cameras are still rolling. The requests for donations still scroll across the screen. But the rooms are emptier. The donations are smaller. And the next generation has already decided they are not interested. This is not a scandal. This is not a single failure. This is a 50-year experiment reaching its conclusion. The prosperity gospel promised that faith plus giving would equal wealth. Millions of people tested that formula, and the results are in. The preachers got wealthy. The believers did not. And that is why the prosperity gospel is finally dying. Not because someone exposed it, but because an entire generation did the math. If you have been following this channel, You already know we have documented individual stories within this movement. The private jets, the mansions, the contradictions between the message and the lifestyle. But this is the bigger picture. This is the system. And the system is collapsing. Subscribe if you want to see where this goes next. Because the fallout is just beginning, and what replaces the prosperity gospel will shape American Christianity for the next 50 years.